closing for the door. No, I didn't. No, I said who? I said, who is it? You're at 3 minutes.
Ron, I think you need to make me a co-host.
Oh, I am so sorry, Joe.
That's okay. And we'll get started.
And before I jump out, I'll make you host, okay? I'll
Fabulous.
stay for like 10, 15.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
You still have 2 minutes plus.
I have noon.
No, live stream says you got 2:15 before it starts recording.
Okay, I'm going to start just because.
All good. Just give me
Okay.
a heads up.
Great. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm here for the third week. Actually, while we're waiting for the live stream to start, I just want to share you what's coming up for the next 7 weeks for Lunch and Learn. And I'm going to double check this, but according to the Chronicle, it's hybrid, in person and online. We are doing a very special project this year of counting the Omer, which are the days from the second night of Passover. 7 weeks, 49 days, 7 times 7 till the giving of the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai with Shavuot. And to accentuate that period of time, if I put this in front of me, you should be able to see it. We have Karen Kadar coming in at the end of the Omer, and each of the Lunch and Learns between now starting in April, it just worked out timing wise until the end of May, are different aspects of the Omer. Rabbi Karen Kadar, who actually was a rabbi here many years ago, has written a beautiful guide to counting the Omer, and it's a deep spiritual reflection. And we as clergy did some study with her, and she's coming back at the end of the Omer for Shavuot on May 25th and 26th. She's a fabulous teacher and rabbi, built up a very large synagogue in Chicago. And it is a spiritual journey of self-discovery that we can go on. And you will see it's a really holistic approach to studying the Omer. Like often we teach a little thing here and a little thing there, but for this 7 weeks, it is truly holistic. You will see emails and Shabbat messages and classes, all helping people delve into this spiritual journey, these 7 weeks, 7 days a week, 49 days until the giving of the Torah on Shavuot. And so it's a very intentional, beautiful, moving process. And so I hope you'll be able to join that you'll find in your Chronicle, which I don't know, is there. Omer accounting. It will be a spiritual journey. The Omer, the period between the end of Passover and Shavuot, has been reimagined to make it both meaningful and accessible for the 21st century. Omer counting provides a spiritual guide for our personal journey through the Omer. And we're being very intentional, including having this fabulous rabbi who's created a really widely used study for the Omer. So really excited for that. So that starts next week. I want to double confirm I think it's in person and Zoom, but I just want to double confirm that. But now on to today, and our last of our spiritual preparations for Passover. We go, I think the day after Purim, this class started, and that's the way the Jewish calendar does, is propel us forward. But what Amy and I have tried to do in this class is have us slow down a little bit in reflecting on Passover and really thinking about what Passover can mean to you differently, what different insights that Passover can have for us. And in this time, and there'll be one thing that's related to what's going on in Israel, but it is amazing for all the things that go on in the world. that the nation of Israel, like many things in the Jewish world and the world at large, change. There is no one that could have predicted what's going on in Israel and the feelings we would have about it and the feelings Israelis would have. And I actually had the privilege yesterday of speaking with the editor of the Times of Israel podcast for a little thing I'm doing for the Chronicle next month. And they're in shock. I mean, they're just, when the airport shut down yesterday for incoming flights or outgoing flights, I think. So I hope to do the same, but without a strike for Passover, where you think about a couple of things related to Passover a little bit differently. And I want to focus in on two elements of enhancing your spiritual Passover preparation. So the first thing I want to do is share. This is something that I do with the 8th graders. When I'm doing an ethics class, Musa, right now with our 8th graders. And when class starts, we share an image, whether it's this or something else that has a lot of different emotions. Is that appearing on the screen? Thumbs up. You can see that. Okay.
Yes.
So we share what we're feeling right now. So I want to ask you right now, and you can just put in the chat, if you were to answer right now what you're feeling right at this very moment. It's actually been an amazing exercise with the 8th graders. If you can put in the chat what you are feeling right now at this moment in the chat, and then I will, let me do that too. Here, hold on. Just to check in how you are. Calm, great, and excited. You can unmute if it's easier to say it out loud than put it in the chat. Fran or Judy, how do you feel right now?
I feel
organized.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I'm just exhausted. That's all. That'll
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I hope those who are feeling sad and exhausted, I hope you feel better. Now, I want you to look at this and think about what you feel or think you'll be feeling Seder night. Seder night. So put that in the chat or say it out loud. I'm going to put scared and I'll tell you why in a second. Okay.
I'm feeling excited for the Seder.
Okay, I'll put that in the chat. So for those who just came in, we're putting in a check-in of what we feel right now, and then what we feel, what we think we will feel Seder night, or what we have felt in the past Seder night. So you're scared. I'm scared too. So this check-in is great. We actually do it with our 8th graders in the Musar class I'm teaching. How you're feeling right now, and for whatever reason you're feeling tired or scared or worried or relaxed or excited. I'm excited to teach this class, so I'm feeling good. And then all of a sudden, I don't think anyone put the same thing that they're going to feel Seder night or feel Seder night that they feel now, right? So isn't that amazing? Just imagining ourselves at another time, and maybe the matzah behind me helps. We feel differently. I should have put worried, scared or worried, either would work, because I don't cook that often, but I have a great carrot souffle. It's a fabulous recipe. I always post on Facebook that I make for Passover, and I'm scared. Will I have the time to make it? Will it turn out okay? Will I be able to find potato starch? Lori usually gets it. So isn't it amazing that even thinking about Passover, we have a different emotion for all of us, that whatever you're feeling right now, looking at this, that you would pick, and what you will feel Passover. Like, I'm excited now, to teach class, and I am scared or worried or both. I could be right here between the two for Passover. And that there are many holidays that conjure a lot of things, but Passover, which is one of the most observed Jewish holidays by the Jewish people, and people were invited into their homes, really conjures up a lot of feelings. It conjures up, for those who attend a Seder or have like family traditions, it's fabulous. But if you are a host of a Seder, and I don't know if anyone here hosts a Seder, it is exhausting. It is a humongous task. And then some of us, like my sister's in Worcester, Massachusetts, and her husband's not Jewish, so she really doesn't always have it. So she kind of eats matzah. Like for her, Seder is kind of lonely because she doesn't have, people to market with. For like my cousin Louise, who's making second night, it's really busy. Like she wants to know how many people are coming. Like, I don't know. I know I'm coming. I can't speak for everyone else because everyone else isn't sure. So that's the Seder can feel different depending if you're a guest or if you're going to the country club, which, it was an option in South Florida, or Temple second night. And it's a different emotion than now, which is really remarkable. So for this session on spiritual preparation for Passover, what I want to do is examine that personal feeling that we have about Seder and Passover, and dig into some texts that let us delve into our personal and what speaks to us. And then also the other thing I want to look at is partnership and the experience of Seder with others and with God, and how a text that we read at Passover time is also something that can help us understand our relationship with God and use our relationship with those we love in our family to expand and have a more beautiful, deep, and rich Passover experience. So any questions or comments before I continue? Okay, great.
I actually have a question. And comment.
Go ahead.
So,
Steve.
Yeah, I'm going to try and say this in a way that you're putting it into a spiritual context. I think Passover is probably the only holiday where you have a choice as to how you're going to observe it. You can go away on a program. You can and not do any work. You could purposely go away to choose not to do the shopping or cleaning the house. You could celebrate one night or another. You could eat kitniot, but you can't. I think for so many people, it's tied to, am I going to prepare? Am I going to do the shopping? Am I going to clean my house? Am I going to cook? Or am I going to go away and do something? And I think in talking to relatives, my grandparents and everything else, back in the day, you had no choice. You did shopping. You were very limited in what you had in the store. You have to make everything. I think it's relatively easy now compared to the way that it was, but I'm not sure people think about the Seder night as opposed to getting ready for the Seder and all that's involved in the food preparation. Maybe fine when everybody sits down, but usually if you have a host, you're still concerned about is everybody getting fed and everybody bring the food to the table. So spiritual, I think, is almost a luxury because of all the preparation that has to go into it if you're actually celebrating the holiday at home and having guests.
Right.
There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I don't think you can diminish that. Or even nowadays, for people that are on a limited income, the cost of everything.
Yeah.
So I think there's all these different ways to consider it. And I think if you go to anybody in public that's shopping for Passover, the last thing on their mind is to be the spiritual. They're getting their food ready, they're getting the cleaning ready. And I just think it's almost, maybe if you want to bod, you're thinking more about the spiritual, but you can't get away from the rituals that you have to do to celebrate Passover.
Yeah.
Like
The schlepping.
holiday. Exactly.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I think that getting ready, doing the shopping, depending on how strict you are, cleaning your house and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe ultimately you get to the spiritual. There's so much prep work that you have to do for that. And I think that's sometimes overlooked. It's just assumed, we're going to do that. And I think that's why if you go online, you see all these celebrate Passover in Italy or in Orlando or anywhere else to save you all the work. And then on the other hand, I think there's a payoff. You do all that work and it feels like you're doing something. So I think you can't I think it's almost, people could do whatever they want, but I think there's something about all that preparation work, which makes it more of an interesting holiday.
Yeah, for sure. Your
component onto it.
Right.
I don't think you'd separate that from the spirituality, honestly.
And I think, and Philip, I see your hand up. Just two things come to mind. One, I'll never forget one Passover. Had a bat mitzvah meeting with a kid, and she walked into my office with a bag of pretzels, and I was like, "Guys, it's Passover!" Like it didn't even like fathom any of them to think like walking in the temple with a bag of pretzels on Passover. Like it was, they were like, I mean, they put it away, but that was like, to me, like, I find less and less. I mean, I used to take matzah to school, less, that's one thing. The other thing, Steve, your comment makes me think about is if we really like work hard to like know everything, then it will be the spiritual and the physical will kind of happen in sync. It's like when, you might go to a wedding and you might deal with the dress or the makeup or the hair or whatever, they're buying the present and RSVPing if you have to fly. But once you get there, seeing the couple under the chuppah makes your heart feel a different way than you felt when you checked in for your flight. It's all, so I think like that's what and then this class topic was Rabbi Amy's idea that, thinking about the spiritual, because the matzah is going to be there, like whether, we want it or not, but what else can we get out? Philip, did you have your hand up too? I'm going to ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have two very fast comments, which is just practically the same subject as what Steve said. Two little mini favorite things is I used to watch a lot of Jewish cooking shows because, I like to cook. And Joan Nathan once said about Passover, she said, in the afternoon, it's like running a marathon and you hit the wall. I think that's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
Other thing is, when I was in New Jersey in Kim's congregation, I used to help prepare people for conversion. And I took this class about how to help people with conversion. And this woman who's Vicky Farhi, which you might not know her, you don't know her, she taught the class and she converted. And she said the first year she made Passover, she thought, oh, this is so great. My family's going to love this. It's going to be so terrific. And she said, the second year, I thought, this is sure a lot of work. And she said, the third year, I thought, boy, who thought this up? And she said, but I knew I was Jewish.
Oh, that's hysterical. I want to share a little Talmudic midrash to kind of express what I want to do today. This is one of my favorite midrashim. This is about, Judy, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up. Let me read this and then we'll come to you. So said Vespasian, who helped conquer Jerusalem in 70 CE with the destruction of the Second Temple, said Vespasian to Rabbi Yochanan, if there is a jar of honey round which the serpent is wound, would one not break the jar to get rid of the serpent? So this is a metaphor for the destruction of the temple, that the Romans were so violent that imagine a snake wrapped around the jar, and rather than just getting rid of the snake, you smash the jar, which is what they did with the city of Jerusalem. It's a metaphor. He could give no answer. Rabbi Joseph, or some say Rabbi Akiva, applied to him the verse, God turns wise men backward and makes their knowledge foolish. He ought to have replied to him, we take a pair of tongs and grip the snake and kill it, leaving the jar intact. So what I want to do today is deal with the serpent. I want to I don't want to focus in on like the everything of Passover, because there's a lot of everything and Amy's already covered parts of it with you, but I want to focus in on the snake I've chosen, the kind of specific sections I want to look at and reflect on your personal. Judy, go ahead.
I kind of disagree with Steve. When my kids were little, a neighbor and
well, everyone's entitled to their own. You just have a different opinion, but like, go ahead. That's fine. Yeah.
Incidentally, my son lives in West Boylston next to Worcester. So if your cousin or whoever it was,
my sister, yeah,
to get them together.
So Holden, she lives in.
I always loved going with my close friend, and we'd go to Worcester because we couldn't get the kosher food we needed in our city. And we loved it. And we loved all the preparation. And all my kids, all 5 of them, were involved in getting ready for the Seder. And it just went well for us. And I just have nothing but warm feelings about such an important tradition. That's me.
Actually, that was my point. It's a wonderful tradition if you want to do it, but now you have options not to do it. And one other thing, and I'll speak quiet after this, you go to a supermarket now, there must be 25 different kinds of matzah. There's cake, there's almost Passover bread, there's noodles. So it's almost as if the food is not so different than it is when it's not Passover. Whereas back in the day, you didn't have that many options. So I think it's amazing. But yeah, the preparation is the fun part if you want to make it fun. but I think people have options to go away for Passover as well, because they don't want to go through the dishes and all of that. So I think it's a choice. And I think that generation ago, you maybe didn't have that many choices as you do now. I think also people celebrate one night rather than two. And especially here in Miami, you can eat rice and beans where you might not have if you grew up, Ashkenazi versus Sephardic. So food-wise, there's a lot to it, but I think the preparation is the fun part. If you get involved, there's separate dishes. So there's a lot of work, but there is a payoff if you do all the work.
And cultural change affects things like, as a working woman, it's really hard to fathom preparing Passover. Where like maybe 50 or 7 years ago, 75 years ago, I would have been at home, and it would have been much easier. I think that cultural norm has changed. Also, there's things like Rabbi Dan was talking about this the other day. There was no corn in Israel 3,000 years ago. So they didn't have to deal with the question of corn. It's part of this continent. So there's like geographical changes that have happened. Yes, first night, second night, there's a lot of different things, but I think that's really important. In the Orthodox world, I think it's different, but in the non-Orthodox world, there's way more choice, including the choice not to participate or to only take the fun of the holiday, but not like have a Seder, have the afikomen, but then eat bread the rest of the week. And I think our diets have changed. Like I can barely tolerate bread. I have a pretty bread-free diet and I have a lot of choices. If not, but it's funny, the first time I'll just share. So for many years, it depends. On some years, like I'll go lead at a country club. With COVID, that hasn't happened as much. But for the first time during COVID, I went to like my husband's family Seder. I'm in a second marriage. And I go in and I'm waiting for like the Haggadah reading to start. And I just start eating. So I go in a corner and I watch. It happened to be like Dan and Lori were on Zoom. So I watched, like I went to a corner and I watched all this. And then like in the car on the way home, it was a little harsh to Mitch, but I was like, did you ever think to tell me you all don't read from the Haggadah? Like my family reads the Haggadah, and I never in a million years thought like, who doesn't read from the Haggadah? But I guess a lot of people don't read. Mitch is like, he didn't even fathom. I'm like, your wife's a rabbi. Like, we didn't even think, but they always did. It's just a dinner. It could be any dinner. There's a great quote. There's a leader without followers. It's just someone out for a walk. I'm going to adjust that to a Passover without the Haggadah is just a dinner. I think there were even like cookies, like from Crumble. There was quite a thing. Anyway, okay, let's go on to the next text. So, actually, I want to show you something. So, or let's do this text and then I'll show you a video. Because again, we're balancing between the personal and the partnership that's here. So this is so timely. Like, just thank you, Israel, for giving us so many timely things going on. So I don't know if you know, this has been in the news in Israel about chametz in like institutions like the army or hospitals. So you have to remember, in Israeli society, not every doctor, not every person in the army, not every caretaker, not every person is Jewish. And not every person who is Jewish keeps Passover. So, with all that's going on with this government that's moving the country in a direction, that is causing a lot of protests, one of the laws up right now is that that you can't have any chametz in the hospitals or the military. Now, if you're a Bedouin soldier, or if you're a secular Israeli or an Arab Israeli who's in the hospital, why is Passover being forced upon you? So I just brought in this commentary a little bit. So leavened bread was forbidden not only in the temple, but also on Passover throughout the settlements of the children of Israel. Whoever eats what is leavened, the person shall be cut off the community. So it's so extreme. And that's like kind of what they're going for, is like they don't want to cause anyone. It's like you can't have a Jew break Shabbat for you, right? Like, and if you're creating bread available, not just to the non-Jewish citizens of Israel or, its patients in its hospital or its members of its military, then you're causing temptation for the Jews as well. And so this Passover time is now understood as the political freedom that comes with the exodus from Egypt. After liberation, one must count and prepare for the day when one is permitted to bring complete thanks, the Thanksgiving offering of leavened bread to the temple. We learn from this that political freedom alone is not the ultimate ideal, only the first stage in a long process, at the end of which we arrive at our destination. So ironically, and so timely for our class, it was just passed this morning. In Israel, they're 7 hours ahead, so it's been very easy to keep up on the news of Israel. Where are you? Okay, let me just show you from Israeli News Today, the headlines. 5:06 p.m. So that's like it's like 10 a.m. today. Knesset passes a Hametz law allowing hospitals to ban leavened products on Passover. Now, the law wanted to go farther and search belongings, and they kind of dialed it back a little bit, but the shelves will be cleared, and hospital administrators can set in a policy posted on their website, but they were going to search bags for chametz that was there. And in a country that is supposed to be a democracy in the Middle East, where it does have non-Jewish residents and Jewish residents who choose not to observe, is upset about this because it's coercing other people to have to observe Passover that's there. So again, if we think about like our personal choices about what we do during the holiday, it's almost getting back to what Steve says, is like this law takes away the mental choices that cause us to change during Passover. And as we saw from the beginning, where we checked in about like how it feels, right? Passover feels different because we make different choices. We have to change our systems, our routines, what we do, what we pack in our kids' lunches, right? If they keep it. And by creating in a democracy laws that only favor one religion, but it is the Jewish state, are we taking away the freedom because you're forcing other people who aren't Jewish? For me, and this is my interest, like for me, the personal, because doing a lot of Holocaust work, for me, what I wanted to share with you now, because it so happens that the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is timed with this time on the Jewish calendar of Passover, and just this season brings Yom HaShoah and Yom HaTzmaut, a lot related to the state of Israel, this whole Omer period, and starting with Passover. So what I wanted to share with you, a short video from the Holocaust Museum, is a little bit of a video about a Haggadah that they have. I have a friend whose wife studied another Haggadah, which was a Haggadah for a DP camp, but this is the survivors Haggadah. And I just want to share with you a short video about that from the Holocaust Museum, where I was just accepted for a seminar for a week. So I'm really excited. Okay, here we go. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
Director of the library at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial. My name is Lenore
Can you hear
Bell,
sound?
and I'm director of the library at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Today I'm talking about a Passover Haggadah in our library's collection known as the Survivors Haggadah, created by Holocaust survivors for Holocaust survivors. The text and intricate borders are credited to Yosef Dov Scheinson, a Hebrew teacher and Zionist from Lithuania who survived the war as a slave laborer. Abraham Klausner, an influential American Jewish chaplain stationed in Munich, was planning to conduct Passover Seders for survivors at the first Passover after liberation. He discovered this Haggadah and secured U.S. Army support for republishing it. The cover of the Haggadah has the insignia of the U.S. Third Army, the occupying force in southern Germany. So the cover was added by Rabbi Klausner as a way of acknowledging the U.S. Army's support. The Hebrew title of the Haggadah is Musaf LaHaggadah Shel Pesach, which means supplement to the Passover Haggadah. I believe that the editor of the Haggadah wanted to convey that this is not a traditional Passover Haggadah text, but rather an adaptation. It's an adaptation that draws on the parallels between the biblical Exodus story and the experiences of the Holocaust survivors. Another addition to the Haggadah that Rabbi Klausner contributed is a very patriotic introduction in English, which recognizes the role played by the Allied forces in rescuing and liberating the Jewish people. Rabbi Klausner anticipated what the attendees of the Seder might experience and recorded that in the introduction. Shines focuses on parallels. We see we were slaves to Hitler in Germany. But on another page, he includes the traditional passage from the Haggadah, Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. This traditional passage is accompanied by a very poignant woodcut entitled, We Dug Trenches in an Unending Circle. This woodcut is part of a portfolio produced by Miklos Adler, a Hungarian survivor of an Austrian work camp. On this page, we see an illustration by Scheinzen and a quote from the traditional Haggadah text, beginning with an enlarged Hebrew letter Bet, reminiscent of illuminated manuscripts. Within the letter, we see a juxtaposition of the pyramids in ancient Egypt and the barbed wire of the concentration camp. The quote is B'chol dor v'dor, in every generation, one must see oneself as if he or she personally went out from Egypt. This passage is really the embodiment of the Seder experience. By participating in the rituals of the Seder, by reading the text, one transmits the lessons of the Seder and of the Passover festival to the next generation. In the Haggadah's final woodcut, smoke is seen curling up from tall chimneys, becoming the disembodied heads of an elderly couple and a child. The caption below, which in Hebrew reads, Lefichach anachnu chayavim, is translated, Therefore we are obligated. What we are obligated to do, according to the psalm from which it is taken, is to thank God who performed miracles for our forefathers and us. But rather than praising God, the image presents God's instruction to Abraham in the book of Genesis. Lech lecha el haaretz, go forth to the land, suggesting that the survivor's obligation, destiny, and hope is in the land of Israel. This Survivor's Haggadah is a wonderful example of how the library has been able to support the museum's mission of rescuing the evidence of the Holocaust, to preserve materials and make them available for future generations.
Okay, so I brought that in because it is a reminder that part of the spiritual preparation for Passover is the personal. Like, where am I right now? What do I need to be thinking about on this Passover? And the fact that, like, in 1946, that there was the wherewithal to not just create text, right? Hitler enslaved us, but imagery, and even imagery, Americans are the way, like the evolution of talking about the Holocaust in public has changed over time. Frank Field, who's, if you're from New York, very famous weather meteorologist, spoke here a few years ago. In 1990, he spoke on, he was at CBS at the time, he used to be at NBC, and he did a documentary about returning to Germany and his family's footsteps and places his family had been lost. And people wrote to him, he shared letters with me in the thousands saying, I've never talked about it. And that was in 1990. So the fact that in 1946, some people could articulate what they'd been through and connect it with Passover. And it'll be really interesting to see with this Passover in Egypt, in Israel, what it's going to feel like. And it's funny, we have a women's Passover experience with an excellent speaker. If you haven't signed up. I went to high school though. She's a fabulous journalist, but one of our congregants was traveling to Egypt right before. I'm like, can you take a picture of yourself in front of the pyramids? Because like to go as a free Jew in Egypt in 2023 is much more remarkable. When you think about like the original story of slavery and what that means. And so part of the spiritual preparation is figuring out what can you bring that you personally care about. That's why we checked in about how you feel now and how you feel about Passover. Like, what are you feeling right now? And there are always a myriad of additional readings or offerings. Like, are you very focused on Israel right now? Are you very focused on the environment or whatever you are? There are so many resources out there. So your spiritual preparation can be enhanced. And that for me, like being aware of what people talked about post-Holocaust in their Passovers, to me is very important, especially because there's so much timed at the same time, particularly Warsaw Ghetto. The next quote I want to look at is a beautiful moment in Torah that then is taken and put into Song of Songs. So it is a custom that on Passover, that after the second, like the morning of the second day, that Shir HaShirim, which is a section of the Hebrew Bible, Song of Songs, it's called, is read. And there's a lot of different reasons why this section of Bible is read on that morning with every holiday. So like we read Ruth on Shavuot, which will be the end of the time. We read Ecclesiastes on Sukkot. We read Lamentations on Passover. We read on Tisha B'Av. There's different periods of time that we read different biblical texts that are there. So Song of Songs is read on the Shabbat, like the first Shabbat and Passover, because there's a lot of spring imagery. Song of Songs is like very like saucy kind of text. It's, King Solomon's said to have written, it's like a metaphor for love between God and the Jewish people, but there's a lot of metaphors that are of romantic love that are there. And there's a lot of spring imagery. Winter is past, the blossoms are appearing, things like that. But there's a deeper understanding of relationship that I want to go into a little bit in relation to Song of Songs. So let me get back to the part that I was at. Here we go. Oh, wait, a little bit farther. Where is it? Okay. So this is a passage from Song of Songs. My dove in the cleft of the rock, in the hiding place of the steep, show me your visage. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is lovely and your visage is beautiful. Now remember that the cleft of the rock will be the place that Moses is put by God when he wants to see God come in this close connection with God after he gets very frustrated with the Jewish people, the golden calf. But this goes to an earlier time when the children of Israel were waiting to be able to cross the Red Sea, and they saw God as hiding, right? And then they sing, the sea parts, and then they cross through. So it's like a calling to God to come out and hide God's face. And as you can see, that this is when the Jewish people finally, after the Exodus, come forth and cross the Red Sea after God has been in hiding for a lot of years. The whole idea of a romantic relationship, which is referred to again and again in Song of Songs, is also an opera, which is read during Passover, again, on the surface because of spring, but I think also for deeper reasons, is an opportunity for us to examine our spiritual relationship with God, right? What are we thinking about our connection with God at this time? And just go back to the initial story, right? Like if you have do you know ghosting? Do you guys know what ghosting is? It's like when someone doesn't answer you, right? So like God had kind of ghosted the Jewish people for 400 years, because when Joseph dies, he's vice president of Egypt, and then for 400 years we hear nothing in Torah, and then we're slaves, and the people are like, where's God? And then God says, oh, finally I hear your call. You're like, are you kidding? Like, you're supposed to be always there. So there's an absence. So think of like if you like someone but they don't call you back, right? I'm sure you were all called back, but maybe you did this with someone like where like they didn't call you back, you're like waiting for their call, or like, oh, I want them to call me, or I like them, but they don't like me, or whatever like that. So there's this like romantic kind of excitement, but nervousness and worry. Will my lover be there? And Passover has that, because you have this hundreds of years where God, the Jewish people are enslaved. And then even if you think about the way the plagues roll, right? It's not like it's all fixed at once. It's like this very, it's almost this flirtation, this back and forth that exists. We start with, go let my people go. And Moses goes back and forth. And then the Nile and the Red Sea, there's like a buildup. It's not like we start with the death of the firstborn. It's that we are eased into. There could have been one plague, there could have been 3 plagues, there could have been 10 plagues, there could have been 100 plagues, but like God chose this order in order to get to the point where Pharaoh would see that it was time to free the Jewish people. But for the Jewish people, they're dealing with God that really has felt like an absent lover for many, many, many years, which is the sentiment that's in Song of Song. And then God is there, but all around there's all these emotions. There's fear. There's a lot of emotional damage about having been slaves. There's a lot of unsure feeling. And we will see that, because remember what happens even after this frustrates God tremendously, after the freedom and the wandering through the desert for 40 years, there's still a desire sometimes to go back to Egypt. Remember, the Jewish people say, oh, we want the watermelons and cucumbers of Egypt, or we're going to build this golden calf because we're worried that Moses is God. Like, it's just so like that frustration of a romantic relationship. So in addition to Song of Songs representing spring, it also is a time to examine like a deeper relationship that you have with God, right? And like, why does God sometimes feel very close and strength giving? Why does sometimes God feel very far? And how does the Passover story and reliving it and going through it help us feel a stronger relationship with the ancient Israelites who led us through? The most blatant basic thing is look up in the sky on Seder night. It's always a full moon. It's the middle of the Hebrew month. And to think 3,000 years ago when there's no electricity, that's the light that guided them, as they left Egypt, is remarkable. There's also a full moon on Purim the month before. They're a month apart. That story took place like about 1,000 years later. That's there. So think, in terms of like, you have the personal, like take things that are of interest to you, whether it's Holocaust or environment or, rights or whatever, what's going on in Israel, and figure out readings that can enhance your Seder that speak to you personally. But in addition, use Passover as an opportunity to explore relationships, right? It plops on you the most romantic, saucy, sexy text, this Song of Songs, but it's in addition to the spring elements, it's to like open your eyes and say, think about your deep, deep relationships, your deep relationship with God and your deep relationship with other being. And when I showed that initial graphic of how you feel right now and how you will feel on Passover night, part of the reason you feel different on Passover night is you're in company with others. Most people don't have Passover with strangers. They have Passover with people they know or they're related to or they're friends with, or they go to a place. Like a lot of people come to temple to be at a place that means something to them. And so it elicits different, deeper emotions. So use the time of the Jewish calendar to like reflect on your deeper relationships and how can you put in that intensity of Songs into your reflections. Any comments or questions about that? Okay. I was thinking a lot about like the place of temple in people's lives, because yesterday, Rabbi Silvers, who's Rabbi at Congregation B'nai Israel, lost his wife, and was, friendly with him and knew her. So I was sitting in the sanctuary of a synagogue that's not my synagogue. And I was there early because I needed a good seat because I had to leave because I had a funeral to go to after. And I was like, it's like so remarkable what synagogues mean to people. Like I know that with Bethel, but when you're in a synagogue that's not your home synagogue, but watching people mourn and come in and hug and be social, it's very moving. So like when people come to temple for Passover, I don't think people take it lightly. I think that they really, they're coming to a place that means something. So how can those relationships be enhanced as well? All right, I want to look at a text from Safaria, which is a great website that brings another both personal and relationship or partnership oriented examination of the holiday through biblical texts and just these like incredible deep understanding of Passover that are there. So let me just share my screen. Sophia, do you want to read? Dr. Stone, do you want to read Be'or HaMetz, Angels and Human Beings?
Sure. Two questions arise regarding the removal of chametz. What is the purpose of the mitzvah of this ritual? And why do we make the declaration of the removal of chametz in Aramaic? Shouldn't the declaration be in Hebrew, just like the blessing? Want me to continue? Or you want to?
Yeah, please. Sorry. I made this big by mistake. Here we go. Go ahead.
We must preface our answer with a statement in the Midrash Rabbah. The Midrash tells us that on Yom Kippur, when Samuel sees that Israel is without sin, immediately begins to praise them. Master of the universe, is there any other people in the world who stand at attention before you like angels and as pure as angels? On Yom Kippur, Samuel acknowledges that just as angels have no evil inclination, so too, once a year on Yom Kippur, neither does Israel. Just as angels stand at attention before God, so does Israel. The Midrash suggests that while Samuel came to accuse Israel, he wasn't able to do so. He praised them instead. This is quite surprising. What spirit overcame Samuel that he changed to accusation to advocacy? He could have simply remained silent rather than praising them. The sages of truth, and I'm curious, who are the sages of truth, explain that there is a question concerning Israel's status vis-a-vis the angels. Is Israel's status higher or lower than the angels? On the one hand, the souls of Israel emerge from the world of Bria,
creation,
or the throne of glory, while the angels emanate from the world of
Yitzira, like Yotzer, to form, like create.
Formation. On the other hand, angels attain a higher spiritual level since they have no evil inclination, unlike human beings who do. Despite Israel's lofty status, the angels are not jealous of Israel because they know that Israel was created with an evil inclination, thereby lowering their status in relation to the angels.
Oh, sorry.
On Yom Kippur, however, when Israel is without sin, the angels have reason to be jealous of Israel. This is the one time you hear Israel overcomes its evil inclination. We can now understand why Samuel chooses to praise Israel on Yom Kippur. The evil one is not permitted to accuse Israel on Yom Kippur. So instead, he begins to praise Israel so the angels will become jealous of them. He reminds the angels that on this day, Israel was even superior to the angels, or is. We can now understand why we recite the declaration for removing chametz in Aramaic. When we remove chametz from our homes, we also remove the evil inclination from our bodies. Similar to Yom Kippur, we become more like the angels at this time through this ritual. We are concerned with making the angels jealous as they are Yom Kippur, so we recite the declaration in Aramaic, a language which the angels cannot understand.
So again, what it is taking the holiday of Passover and comparing it, right? Putting it in relationship with another time, another season, another holiday on the Jewish calendar. So part of the way that you enhance your spirituality of Passover is that you don't just sit in the Passover. And I think, Steve, maybe this is why that's so important for all the things that Steve pointed out earlier. If you only stay in Passover, in the cooking and the cleaning and the schlepping and the burden, because it is a burden. And someone told that, Judy, I think, or did you tell that great story the third time the person knew she was really Jewish because she complained about the Seder? Or Philip said that, right? So that's true. Like, that's part of what we are as a people. Like, everything's never totally good. When Dara Horn was here, she talked about how Yiddish stories never end happy. Americans love a happy ending, but Yiddish stories never end. They don't have a happy trope. If you watch Israeli movies, they're very dark too, a lot of the time. So if we only stay in the narrow, right, Mitzrayim, the narrow places of Passover, then we might not see the joy of the holiday. But once we do personally, which has happened over the decades and over the centuries, the tweaks and the changes that have happened in Passover, like even that whole rice Sephardi Ashkenazi thing, or corn, once you come to America, like, people in other parts of the world don't have to deal with, today they can get corn, but like 1,000 years ago, you're not dealing with the corn question in the way you are today, where corn is very abundant, especially in the United States. Or do we think about ourselves in this other biblical text, Song of Songs, which is brought up at this time, not just for the shallow reason of spring, not shallow, but the seasonal reason of spring, but also because the deep, deep, deep love that is conveyed in Song of Songs is what is the attitude we need to be taking on during this time in the Jewish calendar. Do we think about our deep love for God and freeing the Jewish people? Do we think about our deep love for God and giving us the people that we get to celebrate Seder with? Do we think of our deep love for God, that we are not slaves today, or whatever situation we are in? Is it not like that of the Egyptians? So, under Egypt. So this text is another way of comparing and saying, look, even the holiness that we find at Yom Kippur is contained at Passover as well. And how do we know that? Because we say this verse in Aramaic, so the angels can't even know what we're saying to God, because it's such a holy and precious time, the cleaning, the going out, that is there. Again, it's hard, like, oh my God, like, the cleaning out, I used to do so much more. It's hard, it's hard when you live, again, I'm in seg marriage, so like people are a little less into it in my system now. So it's hard, when you're lonely in your home, carrying out Passover. It's always, it's an interesting, and that's modern too. Like, that I think 50 or 75 years ago, it wouldn't even be an option for a Jew anywhere in the world, not to do that. As all the other thing I just want to show you is this beautiful reflection that goes back to Gan Eden, the beginning. I think the beginning is a good place to end, because this is a way for us to begin a new, deeper reflection on Passover based on what Amy has taught you and what I've taught you today. So Philip, do you want to go ahead? Kadesh or Chatz? This is part of the order of the Seder. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There
go ahead.
we go. I didn't push the right button. There are good reasons for the customs of Israel, which are based on the Torah. The things we do are surprising for those who lack knowledge and understanding of what makes this night different from all other nights. Flour, wine, meat for Passover offering, and festive offering with apples and nuts for roastes are understood by the sages of truth to be a way of ridding Israel of Adam's sin in the Garden of Eden. We seek to repair through which we sin.
And that's the point I was making. Like, it doesn't have to be, the more you know, and understand about the holiday, the deeper and more meaningful it will be. But you have to have the knowledge. Keep going. There's controversy.
There's controversy about whether the fruit which Adam ate was from the vine or the wheat or the fig tree or the etrog tree. Since we do not know which one he sinned, we consume them all as part of the Seder. For those who say it was from the vine, we drink 4 cups of wine. Through this mitzvah, we repair the sin of the Garden of Eden. Now, that's interesting. Wine for vine. Since there is a question, if it was the wheat that we ate, we make matzah from fine flour. Since it is still a doubt, we make harosas from apples, since the etrog is sometimes referred to in Hebrew as the tapuach.
Tapuach, yeah.
I just learned that word, actually.
Yes, well done.
An apple, yeah.
Do you know what tapuach adamah is?
Yes, the potato.
Yeah,
potato.
well done.
Yeah,
well
I'm
done.
doing Hebrew from Israel. Some people add figs to the harosas for that reason as well, in order to remove sin of the tree of knowledge. In Midrash Rabbah, we learn that afterwards, Adam and Eve were all types of animals. Therefore, we eat the lamb for the Passover offering and the cow for the festive offering.
So they're in this text taking the story of Passover and using it as a return and a repair to the Garden of Eden. And Garden of Eden is like predates Judaism, right? There's no Abraham yet. So again, it's making the holiday resonate far, far, far beyond the first night of Seder. And that goes 100% in sync with what Temple is doing for the Omer period, because the counting of the Omer, the time of between Passover and Shavuot, is meant to be a time of serious reflection. And so for real spiritual preparation, it actually just begins on the Seder night, but continues for a long, long time after that. I mean, here what this is saying is like all the way to the creation, to Song of Songs, you're talking about the beginning of Torah to, sections of the book at the end of the Torah. For us personally, it can go from, what's our text that we care about, that we want to connect with, that enhances our understanding of Passover. What is a way that we can think more deeply? And so what Bethel is doing this year is so remarkable, because we're taking the idea of using each of the days of the Omer to learn and study and let Passover live beyond Passover. And I think that's the most powerful thing. And, on May 17th, you won't be thinking about like what an ordeal it was to clean up after Seder. But if you're going through this journey of the Omer from second night of Passover to Shavuot, you are enhancing your spirituality. So to really enhance the spirituality of Passover, it's about making it apply in the same way Judaism does, from Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden to Seder, with Holocaust survivors, to a deep and loving relationship as a metaphor for the time, and examining your own deep and loving relationships and using the story to enhance. So hopefully this month has prepared. We will, it's set for the Omer counting and these sessions that start next week. That they are hybrid. I believe we'll confirm that with emails this week. So you might be able to come in person if you're so driven. And if not, then you'll be able to do this online. And as always, it's a pleasure to learn with all of you. Any closing comments or questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up with what I said. I think all the shopping, the preparation, that's part of the spiritual journey. You don't look at it as like, oh my God, I think you start thinking about Passover, and it is a different kind of holiday. So I think all that prep work, you start thinking about that. It's also, I don't want to relate it to the Exodus, but you're getting ready for this journey that you're about to undertake. And the food is different. So you're thinking about it constantly. And I think if you go to synagogue or whatever, but I think part of it is that you are eating different things. You are
right. And if you don't do that part, then you can't get to the spiritual part. Like if you don't do the mundane basic of Passover, then how do you even get to the next part?
But I don't even
Of
think
it.
it's being basic. I think you're getting ready, it's all the lead up to that first Seder night. But you're looking at it almost like you're making that possible.
Yeah.
So it's not
Cleaning the blender after carrot souffle is
like-
Monday. No, I know. Like, that's the thing, but it's also, it's the way Judaism works. Just do it and do it and do it and do it. And eventually there'll be a spiritual meaning. When you watch little kids say Shema, or you say Kaddish when you've lost someone, even though you don't feel like praising God, like it's the same with Passover, these actions that we need to do. And I think that's, always the big worry of like the modern Jew is like, will they do the actions forever? Philip, go ahead.
The coda to
Best
what I
comment.
said earlier about how much work it is. I used to tell people, when I tell them, when I lived in New York, I used to have these huge Seders in my little tiny apartment. We have 20 people or something, and a lot of them weren't Jewish. But what I said, after you do all that work and you look at their faces, I'm gonna cry. When they
Aw,
sit,
aw.
it makes it worth it.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, I love my cousins so much. Like, I can't wait to be with them second night of Passover, even though the carrot souffle is such a pain to make. But and I always post the recipe because it's so good. But no, it brings. I mean, think of the people you sat with at Seder that aren't with us anymore. I mean, that's why. That I think gets to the point of looking at Song of Songs. These deep, deep, beautiful relationships, and I think it's no mistake that it's read at Passover, not just for the spring, but because we should pursue not just with God, but people that we love, just deep, deep, deep relationships. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your learning. And it was wonderful to be together for the month. Thanks to Ron, our producer.